The Vorthan Council had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia, their authority absolute and their justice swift. In all that time, no prisoner had ever escaped from the Nexus, their maximum security facility that existed in a pocket dimension, accessible only through quantum tunnels that required precise council authorization codes. Commander Sarah Chen had been the first human to learn this fact the hard way. Impossible, High Counselor Zefak had declared during her trial, his crystalline features gleaming under the chamber's cold light. Your species persists in this delusion of exceptionalism. You are merely another primitive race that failed to understand the natural order. Sarah had said nothing then, but her dark eyes had burned with something the Council had never encountered before, not just defiance but calculation. The charges against her were severe: violation of Council space, destruction of a patrol fleet, and worst of all, the liberation of the Kepler colony from protective custody. The Council called it terrorism. Sarah called it rescuing 3 million humans from slavery. The Nexus will teach you humility, Counselor Veleth had intoned as the quantum shackles materialized around Sarah's wrists. No being in galactic history has escaped its confines. You will have eternity to contemplate your crimes. They had been wrong about eternity. It took Sarah exactly 47 days. The first week, she observed. The Nexus was a marvel of Council engineering, a self-contained facility floating in null space, surrounded by quantum storms that would shred any unauthorized vessel. The guards were Nethrak, 8-foot-tall reptilians whose ancestors had been the Council's enforcers for 2,000 years. The walls were composed of phase-shifted matter, impossible to breach with conventional means. The second week, she planned. Sarah's cellmate was Crix, a Delvani poet whose crime had been writing verses that questioned Council wisdom. Through him, she learned about the facility's daily routines, guard rotations, and most importantly, the location of the quantum tunnel generator. Why do you waste time with such thoughts? Crix had asked, his feathered crest drooping with despair. Accept your fate, human. The Council's power is absolute. You know what the difference is between humans and every other species in this galaxy? Sarah had replied, scratching calculations into the wall with a sharpened piece of her meal tray. Everyone else looks at a wall and sees a barrier. We look at a wall and see a challenge. The third week, she gathered resources. Sarah had quickly discovered that human physiology was an anomaly in the galaxy. While other species had evolved specialized organs for their homeworld's unique conditions, humans were generalists, adaptable, resilient, and most importantly, unpredictable. Her higher gravity world origins meant she was stronger than her guards expected. Her omnivorous digestive system could process the bio-waste that other species couldn't touch, allowing her to retrieve useful materials from the facility's recycling systems. The fourth week, she recruited. Despite being the facility's only human, Sarah found allies among the forgotten. Prisoners who had been deemed example cases by the Council, meant to discourage others from resistance. There was Thymos, whose crime was developing mathematics that contradicted Council physics. Nexara, who had dared to suggest that the Council's tributary system was economic slavery. Voss, who had simply been in the wrong place when his planet's resistance movement struck a Council installation. The human speaks of impossible things, Thymos had whispered during their first clandestine meeting in the facility's workshop. Escape through the quantum barriers? Madness. Maybe, Sarah had agreed, carefully assembling components she'd salvaged from broken maintenance drones. But here's another thing about humans. We're very good at making the impossible merely improbable. The fifth week, she acted. Sarah's plan was audacious in its simplicity. While the Council had designed the Nexus to prevent escape through the quantum tunnels, they had never considered someone might create their own exit. Using Thymos's forbidden mathematics, Nexara's economic models to predict guard behavior, and material scavenged from throughout the facility, Sarah had constructed a crude but functional quantum resonator, not sophisticated enough to create a stable tunnel home, but sufficient to punch a temporary hole in the facility's dimensional barriers. The breakout began during the facility's night cycle. Sarah's team had spent days positioning themselves throughout the Nexus, each carrying components of her improvised escape device. When Sarah triggered the resonator from the quantum generator chamber, the resulting cascade effect created something the Council's designers had never anticipated: a feedback loop that turned the facility's own power systems against its containment fields. Impossible, the facility's automated systems announced as dimensional alarms shrieked throughout the complex. Structural integrity compromised. Reality distortion detected. High Counselor Zephyk materialized via emergency hologram, his crystalline features twisted with disbelief as he watched security feeds of prisoners pouring through the breach Sarah had torn in space-time itself. How? He demanded as Sarah appeared on the screen, helping evacuate prisoners into the temporary rift she'd created. Our sciences are absolute. Our mathematics perfect. Sarah looked directly into the camera, her scarred face splitting into a grin that spoke of defiance, ingenuity, and the unbreakable human spirit. Your mistake, she said, was assuming that impossible means the same thing to humans as it does to everyone else. The breach lasted exactly 17 minutes, long enough for 1,047 prisoners to escape into the quantum foam between dimensions, where they would eventually be recovered by the growing human resistance fleet. Sarah went last, ensuring everyone else made it through before stepping into the crackling portal. As the Nexus collapsed into dimensional space, taking with it 3 millennia of council certainty, one message echoed through their quantum communication networks, transmitted from an untraceable source. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Free Human Coalition. The galaxy will know that your prisons can be broken, your authority can be challenged, and your victims can fight back. We're coming for the rest of them. The council had claimed no one could escape. They never made that mistake about humans again.